Mr. Shamo, you're the last one in the door, so you have to lead us in the pledge.
Go for it, Don.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. So if I'm right, I've never presided over one of these things before, so this is a work session to discuss the YMCA and moving forward with the possibility of doing a lease rather than the legislation that we passed, I believe, last year or the end of 2016, where we were going to give a gift of 7 acres and $45,000 worth of water and sewer connections to the YMCA in exchange for them building the YMCA on our property. So in the meantime, what's happened, what's transpired since that time is that we had a opportunity to apply for a grant from the state capital campaign, and so we applied for that grant, and subsequently we were awarded a grant of $750,000 to work collaboratively with the YMCA and really to develop the land. We call it the Puffenberger property. It's going to become the community park. But so that's what brought us together. And one of the things that happened with that grant is that the city has to own the property that everything sits on. So that's what brought us to this point, is that we could have given the land to the Y. If we would have done that, then we wouldn't have been able to have any kind of collaborative working with the Y, and so that's basically why we're here. And my goal is to begin to develop that park in phases, and this first phase would involve creating a road into the park for egress. It would become a city street, and then a parking lot to have some place for people to park, and then that in itself, along with street lights, landscaping, excavation, site work of the property, it doesn't take long to spend $750,000 of money. And so with the opportunity to work with the Y, we're going to have a chance tonight to discuss what a lease would look like and what the terms would be. We had one work session just for a short period of time, and that produced some concerns. And what we've done in the meantime is we went back and we tried to address those concerns. And so that's what we want to present to council tonight, is looking at that first preliminary lease and then addressing the concerns we had in the lease. And so the next thing to do would be to pass out that revised lease to everybody so that we can start working on it, and I can shut up. So Mr. Cozy's passing those out down the road here. Do we want to just keep passing out papers marked with the maps and the site plan? I'm guessing you copied these papers.
No, I didn't even.
You did?
We had them,
Oh,
so I just marked it.
way to go, Mark.
Yeah, I can run the copy right there.
You're right. How the dumpster?
Well, these are all still in the draft process, so
Right.
we're working through everything, there's still stuff that, you know, the basics are here, but still there's some issues here on this one diagram that I recommend we change. Pretty close.
revised lease is what I see the handwritten marks on.
Yep,
Is that
Yep.
the only changes?
well, there's changes in there, so if you have your original one, Sue,
Yeah.
you know, some of the things we addressed already, so we'll kind of just go through it, line by line, and we can talk about, the changes in this one compared to, what was in, the original. So, just for people out there in, the land of social media, you know, we're trying to be as transparent as possible, negotiating this, you know, in an open forum, and like Mark said, you have preliminary proposals, and then you have concerns, you address those concerns, and you try to move forward and keep progressing, so. And I don't know, who's gonna speak from the Y here, to talk about anything, just.
I'll
all you-
speak, Joe,
Okay.
and if I could, I'd like to start off with a
Yep.
few key points
Okay.
about the Y that I just wanted to run by everybody. Okay, the YMCA board is making a significant investment into this project, $1.5 million plus. They are borrowing, and then approximately another 1.5 million due to many pledges committed over 3 years. So for the folks that are committing over a period of 3 years, they pledge their first third, and then the other 2/3, the Y is gonna borrow the money up front until that money gets paid back, okay? So they've got $3 million on the line on day one. The Y will bring many programs, activities, and events to the Canal Fulton area for especially youth, families, and seniors. We teach the 6 character pillars to the children and teens. The Y promises that no one will be turned away from the Y due to an inability to pay. The Y will bring economic development to the area. We're the anchor tenant in the park. The Y is collaborating with Altman to bring a much-needed medical clinic to the area. The Y will be creating a number of full-time jobs and many part-time jobs for the community. The Y will follow our mission to put Christian principles into practice through programs that build spirit, mind, and body for all. The Y will follow our vision to develop youth, encourage healthy living, and inspire social responsibility. Okay? And in Don Shalmo's words, I just want to say that Don has told me many times that he believes he's going to save lives with this. Okay, so it's a big inspiration for him to get this deal done, because we feel as though it's a good, positive atmosphere where kids can go after school and other times when they're at home by themselves, you know, versus maybe sitting down and playing video games or maybe doing something that's not very productive, okay? So, if you're ready to start with the lease, do you
Yep.
wanna go by line item?
Okay, so if we read through the first paragraph, anybody wanna read that to us? Mr. Hooker, you're an attorney, you wanna read that?
Where are we starting?
Start right at the
Beginning?
following represents.
Following represents the basic terms of the proposed ground lease, known as the lease between the YMCA of Central Stark County, the YMCA and the lessee, and the city of Canal Fulton, Ohio, known as the city and the lessor. Upon receiving confirmation that this term sheet accords with the city's general understanding, the YMCA shall cause its council to draft a lease, including these terms for additional review, approval, and execution by the parties. Neither party shall be bound unless and until a lease is executed by duly authorized representatives of both of the parties.
Okay, everybody okay with that? So we have to agree to it, okay? All right, go ahead, Dan.
Leased premises. The leased premises, known as the premises, will consist of the approximately 28,000 square feet of land covered by the footprint of the facility depicted on the attached Exhibit A, to be more fully described by the lease.
Okay, and so you see some notes over there. What we thought might be a more feasible way to approach it, rather than just focusing on the 28,000 square feet, is to carve out a section of the land and call that the premises, a 2 to 3 acre site in the southeast corner of the property. So we'd have 2 existing boundaries, and so at this point, if everybody could move to that map. And so you see the boundary on the right side is Erie Avenue, and the boundary On the south side is our neighbors. Basically, I don't know, is that Lindsay Precast that owns that land next to us? I believe it is.
Don says no, it's Harris.
Harris? Hare?
Oh,
Oh,
Hare.
Don Hare
Hare.
owns one parcel, right? Okay, and then behind him is, that go into Lindsay's property then, so we have two neighbors to the south. Okay. All right, so the portion that's not in blue on your map would basically be that 2 or 3 acre parcel that would become the premises. And with that design, it enables us to deal with expansion if possibly we wanted to create any other partners in this, be it maybe the senior citizen center, other providers other than Altman. So that's something for us to discuss, and so I'm just gonna throw that out to everybody to see what you think about doing a 2 to 3 acre parcel as the premises rather than a footprint of a building. And see if you have any thoughts about that.
Where our thinking was, you know, if you look at the various uses that the Y proposes for the property, all the uses comply with the R1 zoning except for one, and that is the medical facility, which would require a zone change. And it'd be much easier to just rezone a parcel of 2 to 3 acres. And if you look at it, it's already adjacent to commercial land in the township. So, you know, it's not spot zoning, it's tucked right there inside the property. You got commercial across the street, commercial to the east. So it works out nice that way. And then the Y, I know they talk about building a ball field behind the building. So basically, they would be leasing all the land that they're using, and it makes much more sense to do it that way.
And once again, we're working through this as a work in progress, so just throwing out ideas and getting input. So. Any council members want to speak to that concept of doing a 2 or 3 acre parcel? Bonnie, this goes kind of back to, you know, we had that footprint idea, you know, from the very beginning when you got on council, and you said, you know, they're building a 26,000 square foot at that time facility. Now we're up to 28,000, and we can see how the expansion happens. But one of the ideas you had, you know, at the time was, rather than giving them 7 acres, why don't we just give them the footprint of the building? And am I
It was 1 acre,
1 acre?
but I was
Yeah.
told then that I was not an engineer
Yeah.
during,
For the record, I did not say that.
you asked me if I was an engineer.
I said, who did you contact?
No, you
And
asked
what
me
kind
if
of
I was
research?
an
I
engineer.
absolutely go back and listen to it. If there's, if it's on record,
Okay.
absolutely, I did not say that.
So that, but that goes back to your idea at the time was to carve out a
Rather than
smaller.
7 acres,
Rather than
right,
7 acres.
right.
And it really works out well now in retrospect, because that enables us to maintain ownership of the land, but yet gives us the flexibility to work within the grant so that we still have to own the land, and yet the Y would have some room to expand in that area, so. And as they expand, then, you know, they're also maintaining that expansion, I think, with knowing them, you know, they put a ball field in there. Typically, my experience with YMCA is they have like just a flat field, and so when they wanna teach soccer skills to children, they have a field and they put some cones up. When they wanna teach flag football, and I've been through all this with my grandkids over at the Lake Y, and so they were involved in soccer, they were involved in flag football, my grandson was, and then also T-ball, when they they did that. So those are all activities that they would be able to do on this, on a field. So, any other input on?
So what would the 2 to 3 acres be? Would that include the parking lot, or would that be the building and then what's behind the building?
Dan, I put a dotted line around mine,
Okay,
so, just kinda dot where the blue section is,
okay.
okay? So the blue section, Bonnie, just kinda like right there, just carve out that section, whether it be 2 or 3 acres.
So you have
Yeah.
to move away.
Okay. Yeah, dyslexic. So we come across this boundary and then come over to this boundary. Yeah.
So to answer his question, 2 to 3 acres does not include the parking lot, right?
No.
No.
Correct. So you get the idea of where, then we have a boundary here and we have a boundary here. Okay, so that would be, language that, once again, this is an ongoing process, so, you know, you see the 28,000 square feet in there, but that would be changed to a 2 to 3 acre parcel, and then we'd have a surveyor, you know, basically gives an idea of what, whether it's 2.7 acres, whether it's 2.5 acres, 3 acres, whatever that land mass might be, so. Anything else, council members?
I'm agreeable to that.
Okay, Sue, what, any
I'm
thoughts?
trying to see what's different.
Okay,
I
all
would
right,
like to have had this before the meeting,
yeah,
Me too.
that's all I'm saying.
well, it's, it's,
Well, I just, you know, it helps when you know what the differences are and what was
Uh-huh.
given before and what we have now.
yeah, yeah. So, we're not asking anybody to make a decision
Well,
tonight,
okay,
okay? You know, so,
I'm just kinda looking it over.
okay. And, next, paragraph, construction and ownership. Mr. Booker, you're doing a fine job here.
I do know how to read, so.
Yeah. That's why we hired you.
The YMCA shall construct, maintain, own, pay, and be responsible for all of its improvements upon the premises, namely the building and all its contents, the facility and the leasehold improvements, and shall have the right but not the obligation to destroy and remove the facility upon any termination of the lease. The city shall continue to own the fee interest in the premises and the surrounding city-owned property unless and until it conveys the same subject to the lease.
May I ask, why would any lease mention destroying the property?
That's,
I mean, I don't understand it.
Especially if we're still gonna be talking about putting a public restroom in there that
Why
we're
would you
building with the grant
destroy
money.
something?
hold
Why
on,
would you-
hold on. So, what we need to do is, and we're gonna jump ahead, is, to another paragraph that is, that shows, the city getting first right of refusal. So before anything would be destroyed, and, I thought I marked it on mine, but, anybody, the pages aren't marked. What was that under, subleasing?
Page 4.
Page 4? Alright, so if you go to the bottom of page 4, and you see sublease,
Yes,
okay, so then this is where, keep going. Yeah, the
Page
state-
3.
Page
Yeah, I
3?
only have 4 pages, so I think that's page 3.
Page 3? Okay. Mine's not stapled, this copy isn't stapled together. So, if you go to the last sentence there, where it talks about, provide the city with the first, the right of first refusal. So before anything would be destroyed, and you have to keep in mind that a contract has to have a beginning and an end, and you also have to have an exit strategy. And your exit strategy is what we're talking about here. If the Y is not successful, or let's say you get 50 years into this thing, and we are agreeing to something that council's 50 years from now will have to deal with. So that would be what the opportunity would be at that time. Let's say 50 years from now, the building's antiquated, or the Y just doesn't wanna be in business anymore, then they would come to the city and the city would have a choice. Hey, do we wanna take over this facility or do we wanna see it, torn down? So.
You're an optimist, 50 years from now.
Well, it's
We're
a
not gonna-
99-year
We're not gonna be
lease.
around. What do we care?
Uh-huh. Well, and it's, but that is an important topic to address, is that understanding, just like councils before us have made decisions that
Have
are
been
in-
changed since then.
yeah, have been
Right.
changed and impact us in our decision-making. Just like that drawing that's over there from, I believe, 2006, which was the park master plan. And Sue and Danny have probably been around long enough to remember going through that whole process, but, you know, it's a concept, it's an idea, it's someplace to start from. And now the reality is setting in, and there's no YMCA on that drawing, but yet here we are, and, so I'm excited about it, so.
But we never did agree on a lease.
But we're still not agreeing on a lease.
But we never even agreed to even,
Talk about a lease.
we didn't.
Right, that's what we're doing now. We're a public body, so we're
But
dealing
we
with
have,
the,
but what you're saying is, we have to do a lease.
if we want the grant money.
We can get the grant money without the lease
That won't happen.
That won't
for the community park.
Absolutely won't happen.
No, you won't.
Okay, so let me ask a question. Have all of you seen the ODNR document that we received regarding House Bill 529? Have you received it and looked at it as far as what this project has to consist of? I mean, have you looked at this? Have you read what we have to submit to ODNR, to Realm, regarding, it's a project information packet discussing the project eligibility, attention, the nonprofit project sponsors, site vicinity map, proposed site plan, evidence of ownership. Have you looked through this and
Well,
read what?
that's all Mr. Cozy's
But,
responsibility.
but when I look at this and when I look at this lease, it's like, you've gotta look at both of these together in order to make sure that you are not violating getting the money to begin with.
Right, and that's why we're doing
But
this,
see,
because
but
if
we've not
we, if we just gave them the land,
But you,
Then
you
we
need to
would
look
be-
at this
we-
and read it and understand what needs to be done before you can even agree on a lease separate from it, in my opinion, from what I've read in this.
okay. So what you're reading there is, because I just heard you mention something about property ownership, right?
It's part of what needs to be submitted by this city,
Right,
yes.
Right, so that property ownership
Pages
has
3
to
to
show
11.
us being in ownership of the land.
Well, it talks about leasing, it talks about a lease as
Right.
well,
And that's what we're doing.
but
I,
you don't never mind, you've not looked at it to understand what I'm saying.
I'm understanding that we've been awarded a grant for $750,000, and we have to work out the details of that grant. That's what it says. Is that,
Are we going to meet the tax exempt state bond eligibility requirements?
yes, we are.
And what is that?
That means that all the businesses, any partners that we take in there would have to be tax exempt entities, which the YMCA and Altman Hospital both are tax exempt. To go to, I think, Mr. Schwab brought up a point about opening up a Starbucks in there. That's something that would violate the terms of that, the conditions that we have there that we wouldn't be able to do. We can't have for-profit organizations be part of this. Okay? All right.
I just still think that you ought to be you better go through this and look at it. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, well, I
And it
don't know,
needs
Mark, you wanna
submitted,
speak
it's
to
not a
it?
formality, it's a required
I've
formality.
had several conversations with folks at ODNR, and, you know, money was given to us by the state legislature.
Mm-hmm,
So now ODNR has to comply with that. Basically, you know, the land can be leased, and as long as it's nonprofit, we're fine. They like shared use, they like partnerships, And basically through the master plan process, which we're gonna participate in through these next few months for the park, that's gonna set up everything that we're gonna submit to them before we get reimbursed, so.
So we have to lease the property to get the money, is that correct? So
Oh.
why did we not know this back when we did the legislation? Were we
hadn't applied for the
clueless to
grant
that?
yet. This was
Were
for
we
the grant.
clueless to that coming?
Yeah,
We-
basically.
No, we applied for the grant after that.
Oh, I know that.
Right, so you
But
apply
see,
for
we
the
just
grant.
found out in August, and I know this was something that was known before August by administration in this lease.
You know you,
I know you guys knew it, we just found out in August.
well, Sue, you know you have the opportunity to get a grant. That's all you know, and you know the application process.
But there's risk here, there's more risk here than there was before.
In what way? Just because we have to justify,
Financial risk.
by financial risk, you mean that we're getting $750,000 invested in our community of taxpayer
For a
dollars?
park, and you know what, Mayor?
Yeah,
This council never ever discussed the need to immediately move everything out of St. Helena Park to Puffenberger, but it's in that letter that went with the grant. We never immediately said, we've gotta move all this stuff out of the park. It just seems like a lot of things were done without our knowledge.
uh-huh.
And things were said that I never voiced a vote to say, yeah, we gotta get this stuff out of St. Helena Park. We just now put in a $95,000 of new playground equipment, skateboard park, and we're putting stuff there that we're saying we've gotta immediately move out of there. Does that make sense?
Well, I guess the question is, do you want to get money to build and develop a park that doesn't flood a number of times throughout the course of the year?
That was not a concern of this council last year when we went through all this.
Right, so let's go back to the point about you didn't know anything until August.
Right,
So-
about a lease, right.
We didn't know those were the terms of getting the grant, so you can't.
But the grant was done back in January,
Right, you apply for the grant,
but
you don't
the
know the
information,
terms.
all right,
Okay.
go ahead.
All right,
I have a quick question.
yes, sir.
So, when Mrs. Mayberry said we could still get the grant without the lease, and you guys all shook your heads and said no, we wouldn't get, are you saying we wouldn't get this $750,000 without the YMCA, or we wouldn't be able to get subsequently, grants down the road, or both?
I think both.
Well, we've already been awarded the first $750,000, are they able to pull that away from us now? If we said, no, we're not gonna do a Y?
The money was primarily earmarked for the Y. If you basically don't use that for the Y, you stand a chance on maybe not getting reimbursed and maybe shutting off the pipeline for future grants.
And really what we're talking about, the reason we got this money was to put a road in and a parking lot. It's just the first step. If you don't have a road, you don't have a park. If all you're gonna do is pull up along the side of the road, and it just doesn't make sense. You have to have a way to get in to where you're going. And once you get into where you're going, once again, rather than parking on the street, you're gonna park in a parking lot. We're talking about, those two items alone are a huge financial undertaking. So, that's what we're looking at here. It needs to be a collaborative effort. Any more questions on, construction and ownership? Okay, Dan, utilities and connections?
The YMCA shall, nope, hang on, I have to find my place here. The YMCA shall install, maintain, pay, and be responsible for all utilities, sewer, and drainage connections under, within, and upon the premises, and from the premises to the curb on Canal Street. The city shall install to the curb on Canal Street closest to the facility, maintain, pay, and be responsible for up to a maximum of $45,000 all utilities, sewer, and drainage connections necessary for the facility, as well as the remainder of its non-leased property, including the park parking lot generally depicted on the attached Exhibit A.
So I think this was a concern that, somebody had from the initial proposal, was that, I don't think we had the $45,000 maximum in there. So that's one of the changes we made to that. Is there any other changes here that you made from the, initial proposal?
There was nothing about the curb on the initial one. Is that something that's gonna be paid for under the grant?
Says the city.
Well, a lot of
Yeah.
this says the city, but a lot of it's still coming through the grant, so is that eligible for grant money? Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe it should reflect that.
What's that, Bonnie?
I said maybe it should reflect that.
Okay. You want it to reflect,
I'm gonna, who has to pay for what? It really should be spelled out a little clearer.
okay. The city shall install the curb
To the curb.
to the curb.
Oh, okay, so it's not okay, I read it wrong,
I
I'm
need
sorry.
to, I see what you're saying.
Sorry, didn't
So-
mean to confuse everybody.
Okay.
I only kinda know how to read, so.
When we get to the math part, we'll all take responsibility. All right. So Bonnie, you still think that needs further explanation, or, so we're, in one. Maximum,
That's what we agreed to begin with, you mean?
right, that's what we agreed to in the beginning.
I know we agreed to the 45,000 cap.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's what we put in there was the maximum. Okay. Parking access lanes and walkways,
The city shall construct, maintain, pay, and be responsible for an approximately 57,400 square foot parking lot consisting of 135 parking spaces to service both the YMCA and the city's park as depicted on the attached Exhibit A. Adequate parking lot lighting for the parking lot, sidewalks and walkways depicted on the attached Exhibit A. What is that?
shared,
Shared?
yeah, yeah, so,
The shared sidewalks and walkways for this facility depicted on the attached Exhibit A. The city's maintenance shall include snow plowing and salting, but it shall only include paying 50% of necessary repavings or other major repairs and renovations for the above listed items. The city and the YMCA shall contribute equally to necessary repavings, repairs, and renovations. The city's construction shall include adequate stormwater detention solutions for both the facility and parking lot.
And I saw this for the first time today also, because I was out of town, so I marked this up. And I put the word shared in there because the only reason we would share the cost is if we're gonna share the restroom in the facility, otherwise I believe the YMCA should pay these. So however we decide to share this, if we go forward with this, it's up to council whether we wanna, if you look at the first bullet point on this page, we would pay for the sidewalk in the parking lot, and the YMCA then pay for the sidewalk walkway around the facility. If we share the costs for both, that's up to council. Then I scribbled out the access lane for the medical clinic. I didn't think we should be paying for that, so. But yeah, I just saw it today I just saw it just a couple hours ago, so I got it.
This lease was prepared by the YMCA board, correct?
Well, their attorney.
Their attorney.
Yeah.
We didn't ask them to do that for us, and we didn't do our own. So for you to say it's up to council to critique the YMCA's rendition of the lease that they want, that they've given, we should have had our own lease that would have been up to council's decision on how it worded.
That's true.
Not my decision on a YMCA lease that I never asked to be done. So I just wanna clarify that.
So if that cost money, would you have paid for it?
I'm just saying, this is not the lease that we asked to have done. We never asked for this. We were given this. I don't work for the Y, I work for the city, and we did not have a city lease given to us. And we should have had a city lease done.
Well, and that's what, if you ask Mr. Feldman,
I'm just about up to here, and I'm trying to be civil.
okay, well,
And that's all I'm gonna say right now.
well, I'm trying to answer your
You
concerns.
can't
And,
answer my concern,
What?
Mr. Schultz, you cannot.
well, when you bring up a concern about who drafted the lease, cause that's really what it comes down to.
It should have been the city's lease, that the city felt was the best way for us to go.
Okay, so you would feel more comfortable if Mr. Felmuth drafted the lease?
Yes,
Okay. So if you have a lease and Mr. Felmuth reviews the lease, whether he drafted it or not, I see it as a matter of semantics. We're gonna have our legal counsel review the lease.
that's
That-
fine, that's
okay.
fine.
Okay.
You're gonna do what you're gonna do.
Okay.
You're gonna do what you're gonna do. I'm just not happy about it, okay?
Well, I want you to understand that if we went to Mr. Felmuth and said, hey, draw us up a
We
lease,
could have talked to Mr. Falmouth about it
we have talked to Mr.
after the fact.
Mr. Felmuth has been here at a couple meetings, and he brought up his concerns about the lease, and that's what we're here for, is to try to address those concerns.
Has he seen the updated version?
No, not yet.
No,
I didn't know if he was gonna be here tonight.
he should have been here tonight.
All right, but bottom line is, Sue, our legal counsel is gonna review,
I understand.
okay, all right, so,
But there's nothing even in this lease about a swimming pool. There's nothing in here with a time frame like our legislation had in it. There's just things that are not discussed in this lease.
right, and that's what we want, is your input, so that's two questions I'm going to put down here, okay?
I'm not trying to bite your head off, Mayor.
No, I'm
I
not,
just-
I cannot,
I'm
Sue,
not trying to
we
bite your head off.
we represent the city, and our goal is to get the best terms and conditions possible for the city. That's our job, that's our responsibility. We don't represent the YMCA, we
Well,
represent the city
well-
of Canal Fulton. So we need a time frame in there. What was your other, question?
Doesn't talk about the
Yeah, but
swimming
you're on the-
pool.
You're on the YMCA board, aren't you?
Not anymore,
Not anymore.
no, just not in the Rotary Club anymore either, so I kinda
Okay.
stepped
Well,
away
as I say,
from
it
those.
would have been a conflict, yeah, if
Yeah,
you're a vote,
right, and that's one of the reasons I did,
But our city manager still is.
yeah,
Yes.
so. And I think he should be, I mean,
On both?
you want your city leaders to be involved with civic organizations, I think
Well,
that's.
no, I understand what you're saying, but it also, on the board itself, it makes you wonder allegiance to which one, to the city or to the board.
Well, and that's, like I said, for me, that's, one of the things that, weighed my decision, and it wasn't an easy one, so, I'm sorry.
Well, I'm on the YMCA board to take care of city, make sure city interests in that, that's why I'm on the board,
Yeah.
so.
And that's the approach that I took too.
Okay.
I mean, a lot of people in our community wanna see this YMCA happen. When you look at the $2,359,902 that we raised locally, that's a
There's a
lot.
lot that don't though, too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right,
I mean,
but,
really, and I'm still hearing it.
yeah. All right, Sue,
Yes,
I still didn't get the chance to write it down. It was time and,
I'm just saying, when you compare to what we had in our legislation, that some of that information, I don't recall all the different items
swimming
that were
pool,
in there.
swimming pool, yeah, okay,
That it was not in here.
okay. Yeah, and that's, I
Not
guess,
that-
yeah,
well,
and that's what.
Those are the exhibits though, aren't
Yeah,
Yeah.
the exhibits reference a swimming pool, and then I think they mentioned a swimming pool someplace, already that we may have read. Did you read that yet, Dan, about a
I
swimming
have
pool?
not seen anything about.
Okay, we'll come to it then. Alrighty? So everybody okay on the stormwater, and if you, refer to this, the map with the blue on it, so that would be, turn mine upside down. So when you're talking about the parking lot and the stormwater detention pond, those are all things that, you would, you know, that we're looking to produce with the $750,000 that we've been granted. Okay. All right, community restrooms, this is my favorite topic.
The YMCA's facility shall include restrooms and drinking fountains as depicted on Exhibit B, which the YMCA will operate and maintain, and which will be available to both YMCA members and non-members during the times the YMCA is open to its members. The city shall contribute the actual construction costs related and attributable to those public accommodations upon submission of reasonable documentation of the same.
Okay, and so now if we go to this drawing that has a plan of the actual building and, I guess the floor plan, and you see a blue section there, that's what we'd be talking about. There is the restroom, and, what I want us to all notice is, you know, the proximity to the front door. So you walk in the front door, and you can go directly to the restroom. And, you don't have to go through the Y or anything like that. The other thing is the proximity to, the, community room, that, the Rotary Club is helping to be part of, making that happen. Once again, another partnership. There's a, full kitchen there, along with a closet area for storage of tables and things like that. So it would be really nice for community gatherings, rental events, and things like that. So the restrooms, to me, having them inside the Y and making the Y responsible for opening and closing them, cleaning them, putting toilet paper in them, and just taking care of them is a huge burden off the city moving forward for years to come. We, on a regular basis, have issues with the restrooms in the St. Helena Park with vandalism over the weekend. And we've had to install porta-johns to be a temporary solution. And so I don't know how council feels about the restrooms, but that's it.
Do we know how much about that would cost?
We got an estimate today of $113,000.
So you're looking at like a sixth of what we were getting
Yeah,
in this grant.
yep.
Does that leave us enough to do what we need to do with the
Well,
parking lot?
that's something we have to continue to work on, because
What would be the cost if we built them separately?
that's what we're gonna find out, Bonnie. So,
See, my thought is, and I'm just thinking this from a woman's perspective.
yeah,
I get tired of waiting in lines, and if I have to go inside the Y and there are 20 women standing there waiting in the restroom,
yeah,
Well, there'll be
Yeah,
two
that's-
sets of restrooms, right?
Yeah.
A locker room, restroom for members, and then the park for non-members. I
Yeah.
mean,
still doesn't, you guys don't have the same problem, I'm sorry, but can
but, if you would, Bonnie, and what they're talking about
I
is.
go to the men's?
Sure, in the world we live in today.
No,
you
it
can
says
go
he
to
won't
anywhere you want
charge
to.
you with disorderly conduct if you do, so.
No, you won't.
So will we have to apply for another round of grant money in order to be able to construct another set of public restrooms, maybe on the other side of the park?
Yep, that's,
Because, I mean, no one's gonna walk from one end of a park to the YMCA just to go to the bathroom,
well, and-
depending on what's
right, what else?
eventually out there.
What else is eventually out there? At least my goal, Sue, is to have a walking trail around the park. And,
Well, that's part of a park,
yep, and
yes.
so, you know, here's what I envision. People pull in off Erie Street, they go to a parking lot. If they need to use the restroom before they hike on the park, it's got close proximity to the parking lot. If they go ahead and start hiking and they finish hiking, they can go to the restroom before they get in the car to go home. But you're absolutely right, to have another restroom someplace else would be ideal.
Because it would not come out of this round of funds.
Correct.
Wouldn't be enough left.
Right.
So we've gotta count on another
do.
funding round that we actually get.
Yep,
And the park plan, that's part of what these funds are for. The park plan's gotta lay out where different, athletic, sports, like things are gonna be. We don't even know where things are gonna go yet, you know?
Right, but
And doesn't
like I
that,
said,
that needs to be provided to the ODNR?
not in this round, I don't think, I mean, we wanna
You
do
might
a,
wanna check it out.
well, I know they're asking for a park master plan, right? That's what you're referring to?
Oh, whatever they're
Yeah.
asking, they're
We
asking
need to
for,
submit to them what we plan on using the grant funds for. So if phase two is a restroom somewhere else in the park, we don't need to submit that now, but I would agree, I would like to have it all laid out. That way, when we apply for money in the next round, it's there, so it'd be nice to be able to.
it says, please submit to scale, site plan showing all proposed development that will be a part of your community parks, recreation, and conservation project. If future planned improvements are shown on the plan, but are not proposed as part of this House Bill 529 project, please indicate as future on plan. Be sure to label existing facilities as existing and show all property lines. I mean, they are asking for some specific information in
That's
here.
the way that's written, better off not to put in there something you're gonna build later.
Well,
Yeah,
but-
the way that's written right there, you're better off to only put in the plan what you're gonna use our money for now, and not put the other stuff in till you apply for the next round. The way that's written there, so,
And
which
you know
makes
there's
sense,
an
but
or-
yeah.
There's an agency organization agreement that's attached here that they say that you ought to, use,
You see, those are all things to get the money.
joint use agreement.
That's an application to get the grant. You're reading.
This is for,
Yeah, you're reading the application to get the grant.
no, this is an application for the money to be appropriated to you. I mean,
Right.
this,
Yeah, I've done all this before, it's not
I
rocket
understand,
science. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
All right, so, I'd like to get over how the council members present today, what's your feeling about having a restroom inside the YMCA and,
My question would be why, if we're gonna put another one outside, why would you bother putting one inside? You were talking about vandalism and that, well, if we're still gonna have one outside, you're still gonna have it.
Well, we never said we were.
Yeah.
I never said we were.
I think it's a bad idea.
We were what?
I would not propose putting a restroom that is unsupervised somewhere else in the park.
what do other parks do? There are other parks have,
There are some things that are out there with automatic locking systems, so they have, similar to what the school has, where you can activate their magnetic locks, and you can activate them at certain times during the day, but that still doesn't address during the day, somebody going in there and doing vandalism to the restroom. And this plan pretty much, I won't use the word guarantees, but pretty much gives you assurance that kids aren't gonna go in there and vandalize it and walk out. Where, like Bonnie, what I'm saying is, if you just put another restroom and said, oh, there's a good place for the restroom so people have some place to go, I think it's a bad idea.
I thought you had just said that, you and Sue were talking about it, and you just said, yeah, we wanna put another set on the walking path.
Right, someplace else, depending on what else you develop here. Like, okay, so let's say you put a splash park in, let's say you put a, amphitheater in there. Whatever else gets developed on the property, you would probably wanna have another restroom facility in that structure. So that's, I'm not advocating just throwing a restroom up. So I would advocate putting a restroom where there's another facility available, whether it's, a pavilion or,
and you've got the police and fire right up on the other end.
Yeah.
You've got the police and fire department right behind you.
nothing
You
could
see all
ever
the way
bad
down.
happen there because
Well,
they're gonna protect it.
I mean, they are there,
They are there.
You have to admit,
Well,
it's
let
kind of a
Chief speak to
deterrent.
it.
It's a deterrent,
Yeah.
Isn't there a public restroom in Mulhauser Park too?
yes, yes, there is.
It's always locked unless somebody reserves a shelter, then you get a key, because of vandalism. And somebody still tried to set fire on it, last summer. Luckily, we were there and caught it, somebody tried to burn it.
So,
I don't know if it was accidental or not, but, yeah.
It's funny, it was unlocked when I was over there one day.
Did somebody have the shelter too, or?
Nobody was there, I was just taking a walk.
Yeah.
so. All right. Any feedback? Restrooms okay in the Y?
No. I'm not in favor of it,
Okay,
honestly, I'm not,
okay,
never have been.
okay. Dan, how you feel?
I'm torn on this one.
I'm not in favor, Mayor,
Okay,
just for, you asked.
okay, I did ask. Scott?
I'm for it as long as it conforms to the grant.
Okay. All right, so.
I can come back with some numbers. I built a few restrooms. I was over at Jackson, and the last shelter restroom I built was $155,000, but that had a shelter attached to it. And I can go and I can contact, I think Green just built one recently. I can get some numbers of what it costs to do an outdoor, outdoor, well, usually we build a shelter restroom unit together, but, we just do a restroom. But then I guess it depends on how you wanna construct it too, but most of we build are block buildings, cause they're safer, they last longer.
What do we have at NYSA? Anybody know? Bill, you know, are there restrooms there or porta johns? Porta johns, okay. And then, where else? I know I've been to North Canton, to the ball fields there by Walsh College, and they have like a concession stand restroom facility, but they lock them and unlock them only when there's ball games. All right, sounds like no consensus. Surrounding areas, Dan?
The city shall construct, plant, pay, and be responsible for the landscaping in the areas immediately surrounding the YMCA and maintain them in the same manner as it does its landscaping in other city-run parks. The YMCA shall have reasonable recommendation and approval rights on the landscaping and plantings between the facility and Canal Street and between the parking lot and the facility in order to ensure the facility's visibility and general appearance.
No. Totally agree with that one.
The older one said, between the facility and Erie Avenue, and now this one says between the facility and Canal Street.
We weren't sure about what the name of the street is, so, because if you go down to the next paragraph, we go back to Erie Avenue. So there's some questions about what the address is gonna be. So that's basically something we, you know, may say Erie.
Canal/Erie?
Yeah,
Something?
yeah. So, and did the original proposal, have a dollar amount in it?
It
Yeah.
did, but this dollar amount is gone.
Uh-huh.
But see, I think it's just gonna add more cost and more man hours
Yeah.
from the city to do that. So there's just more money
Mhm.
coming on board.
Yeah,
I'm
because,
saying,
like, and that's a good point, because like Dan said, we're dealing with $750,000, and.
but this is a lease for 99 years, according to
Right.
this.
Yeah,
So this is forever.
but basically, that's what
Yeah,
you're committing to.
That's what we're committing
Yeah.
to, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as I look at this, and thanks for pointing that out, Bonnie, I think, yeah, we need to work on this language, when I look at my notes, the beds and shrubs are definitely have to be the YMCA's responsibility, and it doesn't really specifically say that as it was.
But if we're gonna pay for it,
Yeah, well, we're not.
and I don't, yeah.
We're not gonna pay for actual landscaping for the building itself. In my mind, it was like, okay, we have the yard, we planted a couple trees out there, you know, that's what I was
Park
thinking.
was
The park,
yeah.
in the park, yeah.
We would, yeah.
So, yeah, that needs to be, I'm going to mark that again, needs to. Thanks.
All right, we'll be working on that one. Signage and visibility, Mr. Booker?
In addition to being able to maintain signage on its building, the YMCA shall have the right to erect and maintain a sign on the non-leased city-owned property near the Erie Avenue entrance to the facility. in accordance with the same signage standards and constraints imposed upon commercial enterprises within the city.
So I envision, and of course, I've got champagne tasting beer budget, but, you know, if you had some type of electronic sign, there at the entrance that could promote,
Flashing.
upcoming events or, you know, things like that, but,
What?
so whatever they would do, it would have to meet our zoning.
Right.
Alrighty, leasehold expenses?
The YMCA shall pay all taxes, assessments, utilities, and charges of governmental bodies for the facility, if any, all costs of its operations of the facility, as well as insurance and repair costs for the facility.
The entire section of what was in it before pertaining to the city was taken out.
Yes.
That's why,
That's gone.
that's why we're working on it. Okay? Everything in there look good though, the way we amended it? And once again, all this will be subject to review by our legal counsel, who's gonna probably point out some other concerns. The term,
The lease term shall be 99 years, commencing on the lease's execution.
okay?
Can I ask why the 99 years, is that standard?
Yeah, it's,
Is it?
a lot of people do 99-year leases.
Why?
It shows a commitment to the future, you know, so that, if you're looking at it from the Y's perspective, and, just like a tenant in a commercial lease here in Canal Fulton, they wanna know that if they open up their business, that in 5 years, you're not gonna say, oh, get out of here, you know.
But do you ever have a lease that you revisit maybe in 15 years and see if there's some tweaking or changes that might need to be done? That 99 years kind of takes that out of the picture of revisiting it for
Yeah.
whatever reason.
Well, I don't think it does,
I don't know.
I'm not an attorney.
I've never
Right.
written a lease, I don't know what
Yeah.
that stuff means.
I can tell you, and Mr. Shamo can probably speak to it pretty well, cause he's done a lot of leases with commercial leases and businesses where, you know, things do change over a period of time. I don't see it any different than, so to answer your question, I think you'd always be willing to sit down and talk about it, especially if you got into a situation where, either entity was struggling to meet the terms of the current lease, you know, kind of brings you back to the table. I liken it to a tenant who loses their job and asks me if they can, you know, reduce their rent, for a period of time. I have two choices, I can evict them, or I can try to work with them.
Is
And
there a dollar amount here for the lease?
I think we're looking at $1 a year.
Is that anywhere in here?
I don't know if it's in there yet or not.
I never,
But,
don't
You know,
think it's in here.
I'll let Mr. Rouse speak to that as to whether we want, you know, is it a pain in the butt to collect $1 every year on a lease, or are we, better off just to say we have a lease and, or make them pay all 99 years up
Pay it
front?
all in advance. $99 up front. That way you worry about
Either
the dollar.
option's fine.
Either option's fine? Okay, alright, permitted uses.
The permitted uses of the leasehold shall be the construction, maintenance, and operation of health, fitness, youth development, senior citizen, childcare, and community facilities, including a swimming pool, a medical clinic, and community offices and/or meeting spaces.
Okay, there's that swimming pool thing, so that,
Yeah.
you know, it's in the drawing, and I think, I talked to Mr. Schetzer, and he can maybe speak to it, but they've hired somebody to begin
It
designing.
was in there before, I
Yeah.
just didn't see it.
Yeah, but Tim, starting to work on designing the swimming pool area, so,
Right,
okay. How long does that normally take?
you know, 30, 60 days, the Canal Fulton Wide Board's meeting November 27th to finalize the configuration of the pool.
Okay. All right, So that's where Mark wrote in some note, need a zoning change to, accommodate a medical clinic. And we don't really know exactly what Alt Care is gonna put in there yet. Anybody wanna speak to Alt Care's involvement, where they're at with the process?
Well, it'd be nice to know what they're gonna do before we say, yeah, that's okay, go ahead and do it.
Tim, where's Alt Care?
Well, we have a signed letter of intent from them, and now the next step is to do what we're doing here and figure out a term sheet, which will probably take a significant amount of time.
Is it gonna be like a stat care?
Correct.
Okay.
I think they're doing something, they said they're doing something similar to this at Washington Square in North Canton. I'm not sure if anybody's seen that or heard about that, but they wanna do the same thing.
Seems like I read something.
They wanna do the same thing as they're doing there.
Okay.
Okay. All right. I'll just keep my mouth shut, so.
You get less trouble with that.
Oh, I know, but my doctor might be listening, so. YMCA inspections and other contingencies.
The YMCA's obligations under the lease shall be contingent on engineering feasibility confirmation satisfactory to the YMCA, environmental assessment satisfactory to the YMCA, zoning changes and or approvals allowing the leasehold improvements and the contemplated uses, title sufficient for commercial lending upon the leasehold improvements, and the YMCA obtaining financing through tax exempt bonds sufficient for balance of the construction of the leasehold improvements not covered by donations and grants.
I like a bunch of legalese jargon.
So when it says the YMCA's obligation shall be contingent on, so if it's not their obligation, I don't even know, contingent on engineering feasibility confirmation satisfactory to the YMCA. What if the engineering feasibility confirmations are not satisfactory to the YMCA? What happens then? Does that mean that we have to go out and find an engineer to revisit the?
I think it's the
what is this?
YMCA's, inspection and other contingencies, and Tim maybe can speak to this better than I can, but the way I read that is those are all conditions that they have to have met in order for them to be able to proceed. So we're agreeing to this lease, and if they run into a problem with one of these things,
Yeah,
then, you know,
what does that mean?
that means the Y may not happen.
Yeah, basically, say they go out on the site and they find abandoned mine shafts they didn't know were there. That has to do with engineering feasibility, environmental. Say there's a landfill there and or an underground storage tank on the property nobody knew about, and they find that. And they have to, those are the kind of things, this kind of protects the YMCA, that if they find something there that nobody knew about, they're protecting themselves from some unforeseen.
But shouldn't they
Yeah.
shouldn't that all be known before
Well, yeah.
you solicit funding from people, that the money is getting, stored up, the donation money, and then boom, you find a mine or something, and then like it's,
Well,
Then you go to Plan B.
we have we have the ODNR mining, maps, and there's nothing there, we already did the wetland delineation, so that's done. So we're already got a preliminary work done. But this is just things that the standard, like any attorney puts into a lease agreement to protect their client from something unforeseen, so.
But that in no way obligates us to anything, Sue. I don't think. Once again, Mr. Felmuth will read it, and Mr. Booker down there has a law degree, so maybe we can.
That's just a piece of paper at this point. But no, I agree, I don't think that it says, I don't think that puts any more responsibility on the city in case one of these obligations can't be met by the Y. It just means that it doesn't happen, in my opinion.
Similar to a contingency of a home inspection on buying a house.
Correct.
So. Okay. All right, subleasing.
The YMCA and its lenders shall have leasing and or subleasing rights for the clinic and community rooms of its facility depicted in Exhibit B in accordance with the uses permitted under the lease. Insofar insofar as the YMCA would try to lease or sublease any part of the facility affecting access to the community restrooms and water fountains depicted on the attached Exhibit B, or otherwise sell or convey any of the leasehold improvements, the lease shall provide the city with the right of first refusal.
So I'm gonna ask the attorney here, Mr. Booker, that second to last phrase, or otherwise sell or convey any of the leasehold improvements, does that mean everything that's there, basically, in your mind? So that includes the entire parcel that we have, the entire facility, that we have a right of first refusal? If they,
Leasehold improvements is not defined anywhere in this,
okay.
so I can't say for sure.
We need to find that, okay. And that was what Sue brought up earlier about, you know, can you just go ahead and destroy the facility without the city saying anything about it? I think this, but see, this is in the sublease clause, it really should be showing up earlier in the agreement, I think, after it's been brought up. So so these are things we need to tweak in this.
Yeah, I don't know, I read that to mean subleasing where Alt Care doesn't wanna be part of it anymore. Just like, Suma moved out of the Barberton Y and left, 10,000 square feet of space vacant. So now the Y,
Right.
in Summit County would have a right to sublease that, but still gotta come back and meet the
Subject to the
conditions
city.
of a nonprofit status. So that's how I
Okay. It's in
read
the
that as
sublease
far as
section.
subleasing goes.
I'll wait to see what the attorney says.
Good idea.
Yeah,
Well, you
that's-
got one here, but,
Well.
my
It's
opinion
just-
doesn't mean anything.
Just a piece of paper at this point, hasn't been used, so
All
don't
right.
take my opinion.
Well, no, you explained it though, you said that without anything defining that, you can't, and that makes sense.
All right, defaults?
Failure operations within 5 years of the execution of the lease unless extended for good cause. Failure to maintain operations of a YMCA facility under the premises for more than 365 days, consecutive days after operations have been commenced, and the failure to maintain public restrooms and water fountains shall constitute default of the lease by the YMCA.
And then they can tear the building down.
Well, no, they gotta come to us, we got first right of refusal, but I think that time period, Sue, I don't know if that addresses, you know, the failure to have constructed and to have commenced operations within 5 years. So basically, that's what we're telling them is, you got, that time period you wanted in there for them to get it
I-
done. Would you feel comfortable if that was reduced
I
to-
just,
in time, or?
I just didn't know if it was in there, and it is in there.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was in there either. Okay. You comfortable with 5 years? I know Mr. Shalmo's not.
I think that's what we had in the original agreement.
Yes.
That was in, going back to the legislation, I think, wasn't it? Yeah.
How many
Hopefully,
water fountains are we talking about? I don't remember the water fountains being part of that. Public restrooms and water fountains.
yeah.
Where are those water
You're right, we
fountains?
didn't.
Well, they'll be sitting right in front of it, I'm sure that they'll be.
In front of the
parts
restrooms,
somewhere, yeah,
outside,
when you come.
outside water fountains?
Outside the
They're
restrooms.
inside.
Right,
So I would imagine they'd be someplace in here. So
Inside, yeah. I
And-
think if you see, those two, if you look at the blue, you see that little rectangle sticking out from.
Oh, I
Yeah,
see it.
Those are the water fountains, thank you.
Right,
Was
right
it a
here.
good meeting? Oh,
It was, we didn't have Alice attended, so enjoy your meeting, thanks for saving us.
All right, thanks.
Okay. So,
yeah, I think I see that.
yeah. So they are in there, and they all have to be ADA compliant and things like that.
The first concern is we could probably put in the lease agreement that after a 5 or 10 year period, there's a review. Require both parties to get together and look at the terms of the lease. Is there something that needs to change here? But any lease, as long as both parties mutually agree, it can be changed, you know? Like if we have an issue or the Y has an issue, we can convene a meeting and go over it, and then as long as we mutually agree, we can make any necessary changes, so. You know, nothing's really set in stone.
Okay. Damage or default, and damages for default.
There shall be no damages or penalty for a default except termination of the lease, and if termination within 10 years of the execution of the lease and not excused by contingency, the costs actually incurred by the city itself in constructing access lanes, sidewalks, and walkways for a contemplated facility, as well as the cost for installing utilities to the premises.
That didn't
Definitely
make
need,
sense.
need an attorney here.
That never made sense to me when I read it. I thought there's something missing there. It's not a complete sentence.
Dan, what do you think?
I'm gonna read it again.
I read it several times. I mean, I
Yeah.
couldn't figure out.
It's a whole lot of words to say nothing, in my opinion, but I'm not the smartest.
It basically, to me,
Guy
just
in the room.
says that there isn't any damage or penalty, but if something were to happen where the lease gets terminated, that it's, where it's not excused by the contingency, the YMCA would have to pay back the costs incurred by us. Like the 45,000 for the utilities, we would get that back if we have already put it in and then something happens.
In the first
where
10
it's-
years.
Right.
Okay. That makes sense.
But then it says the costs actually incurred by the city itself in constructing access lanes, sidewalks, and walkways for the contemplated facility, as well as the cost for the installing utilities to the premises. It's like there's something missing there. It's like just not,
It's fairly run on, but I think it's all there.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah, the
okay.
complete sentence, there shall be no damages or penalty for default except.
there should be no damages for
termination
penalties
and
except,
These things, yes,
except
yeah,
in construction. Okay, maybe that's where I,
yeah, lawyers.
Was
they-
not-
Yeah.
They really pack it every, that's one sentence, that's one sentence,
That's what's known as a run-on.
yeah.
I wasn't an English major, so.
except. Okay, maybe that-
Alrighty. Additional financing terms?
The lease shall be prior to all fee mortgages. There should be no limit on leasehold mortgages. The lease will include such other ground lease terms as are standard and may be required by lenders in order to finance the leasehold construction, including but not limited to leasehold mortgagees' rights to cure defaults, lease assignability to and by leasehold mortgagees, non-merger of the leasehold, and fee upon termination, etc.
And that's probably pretty standard language for the Y, Tim, as you built other facilities.
Well, it's, information that needs to be included so we can, execute the tax exempt bonds.
Okay.
So our banking representatives have reviewed this.
Alright. So with that being said, I don't know, let's go to the page on, financing, which is Canal Fulton Area YMCA draft, executive summary. Dan, you mind reading the overview, because you are doing such a fine job? We're gonna let you out of recess early.
In 2010, the Canal Fulton Area YMCA was chartered through the YMCA of the USA. That same year, a Y Board of Directors was formed consisting of 20 community leaders. There are 30,000 people living within a 5-mile radius of the city of Canal Fulton. The YMCA of the USA benchmark for a Y facility is 25,000 people. It's the only city in Stark County that does not have a Y facility. Residents are driving considerable distances to participate in various Y programs. Youth and teens need a safe and nurturing place to go with good role models. Half of all current Y members, 53,000, in Stark County are 18 years and younger. The Y is collaborating with the city of Canal Fulton for a 300 square foot YMCA full facility in the park bordering Locust and Erie streets. A long-term land lease will be completed. Altman Hospital and the Canal Fulton Rotary Club will be community partners with a significant presence in the new facility.
So then we see the estimated, project funding. Paul, can you speak to some of this, to tell us, what we're looking at here, and,
question?
Yeah,
first?
you sure can.
The park bordering Locust,
Uh,
it doesn't come down to Locust?
Well, yeah, I think it does. You know, the wetlands, the
Well, that's what-
trees
that's
in
what-
between the senior center and the,
Is it gonna come all the way down there?
well, I mean, that's the
That's
whole
where the
park property. I
Okay,
think
you're
that's,
talking about the park property?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah. Okay. All right, and then also the 26,300 square feet, notice we went to 28,000, and I think that's because of the involvement of Alton Hospital, and their desire to basically have a 1,700 square foot, presence in the facility, in the park.
are they
Provided-
thinking of putting an entrance on Locust Street?
No, I'm not. They, you know, I think when the Y approached us first, they would have loved to be there. But, you know, living on that corner and,
Yes, I
you
would
know,
like it, yeah.
we, just, I just can't say enough about the voters in Canal Fulton because I voted for the, bond issue and, I think it would have been a mistake if it would have passed because I think we would have, spent $5 million and I don't think we would have had as much as our local community is generating and making happen here. And kudos to the 157 people who have committed to seeing this become a reality. So
Is the Rotary, building for sale still?
you betcha. You wanna buy it?
Oh, I heard it was sold,
No, well, we had it sold at one time,
that's what I
but
thought, yeah.
yeah, that buyer changed their mind. So it is on the
Do
market.
you handle that for them?
Nope,
I just wondered,
nope.
okay.
Well, I tried to, but the buyer walked away, so. Anyways, so go ahead, Paul, if you would, tell us, where we're getting the money from.
Okay, the first line item there, community and regional fundraising, $2,359,902. That, came from a total of 157 donors. Most of them within the community, Lawrence Township, Canal Fulton. Some businesses, we've had a number of businesses contribute some significant money.
So as far as breaking those down, we don't really, because of privacy issues.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
I can tell you, I pledged and they've been taking, monthly payments out of my account to fulfill my obligation towards the Y.
Right. Okay. YMCA funds and financing, $1,500,000. The YMCA was borrowing $1 million for this facility. They've got a $250,000 endowment, that's gonna come out of their endowment fund, so that's gonna be a cash injection into the project. Also, they own a gas and oil well down in, some property south of here, so, they're gonna take $250,000 of their proceeds from that gas and oil well and bring it into the Canal Fulton YMCA. I also wanna mention too, that their typical cash injection into the YMCA is $1 million. They're doing $1.5 million for us, okay? The other thing is, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but they're also borrowing another $150,000 to cover people that are making payments over 3 years.
That would be good.
Yeah.
Okay.
1.5.
Oh, I'm sorry, what did I say?
I understand.
So an additional 1.5, so day one, they're gonna have a $3 million investment into the building. Okay. Capital Campaign Committee, $650,000. That came from the Stark County Foundation. State Capital Grant, $538,000. That's kind of a little bit about what we're talking about tonight. $750,000 grant we applied for with the city. Community Partners, $275,000. That is a combination of Altman and the Canal Fulton Rotary Club. In City of Canal Fulton, $45,000, and that is their water and sewer tie-in fee. And incidentally, I think we calculated this some time ago, but there's about a 6-year return on investment on that $45,000 to the city. So within 6 years, they're really gonna be into that for nothing. Estimated project costs, YMCA full facility, $4,734,000. Engineering and architect, $283,400. Furnishing and equipment, $250,000. Site development, $258,000. Contingency, $111,600. For a total of $5,637,000.
So you're still a little bit short?
We're a little bit short, there's a number of commitments we have waiting to come in, some of the donations from corporations, they were exhausted for the year 2018, but they'll be available to us in 2019. So, but we're still looking for donations from anyone to tie in the gap, but we're over 95% to our goal.
Okay. Any questions from council members about,
So $538,000 of that $750 is going towards things that would be associated with the Y. That includes your parking lot, the lighting, the sidewalks, all the stuff that we had talked about here. That's what I'm understanding.
That's correct, yes.
So that really only leaves us, again, I don't do math, but a little over $200,000.
212, yeah. And we
do,
spent some of that already. Keep in mind that we spent, how much, Mark, for the wetlands delineation?
I don't have the number,
Uh-huh.
it's 8,000,
Okay.
give or take, for
Yeah.
that.
So that just doesn't leave us a whole lot to put park amenities into our park here, so.
Well,
So
and
we
that's,
have a wide, no park.
and that's what's important to us, and that's why we have to keep working on it. The other thing, that you mentioned there is, do we have a cost or an estimate on a park plan? Was that something we get from EDG or?
I budgeted 15 based on the past proposal,
Uh-huh,
so we'll see how that pans out.
okay. So really, Dan, we're under $200,000, and we still need to get firm estimates on putting in the street. You know, we went out to bid, or we tried to go out to bid with, getting costs for the site work, but, we've gotten donations of, engineering from Mr. Dorman and Keith Gillespie, who have volunteered their time and, helping us with, some of this work that you're seeing here. So we're trying to save every penny we can.
So the 7 acres is still gonna be consumed by the YMCA and the medical facility, and that leaves how much for park development? I mean, how much,
When I get online, Sue, what I see is like 37 acres.
but there's a lot unusable.
Well, and, so when you get
A
into the
portion
wet.
is unusable, I shouldn't say a lot.
Yeah, that portion that's unusable is, that wetlands up there on, Locust Street, you know, so we're not gonna touch that. Some of it because of, well, in the park plan, they called for a sled riding hill behind the police and fire station. You know, which looks good on paper, but when you think about people, jamming up the parking lot of the fire department, you're not sure it's such a good idea anymore, you know, so. But to go back to, you know, what we're thinking here with that 2 or 3 acre in the corner, that would be carved out for the Y. The parking lot would basically be the parking lot in the road would be that part of the remaining 7 acres, basically, that we
And the
initially.
retention pond
A retention pond's in there too.
in there?
Which, the retention pond, I think it's a joke, it's just a low spot, but, you know, it was considered a wetland and, but, you know, the engineers, Stark Soil and Water have, looked at it and, they're comfortable with the plans that, Mr. Gillespie, Mr. Dorman have, designed for the property.
Is it gonna have standing water in it, you think?
I'm not sure how, Don, you understand that better than I do. With that water standing there, it would just be filling up and then run out. What's the difference between a detention pond and a retention pond? Can you help me out?
I know what retention is.
Yeah, retention pond, of course, it's gonna gather there and be left out very slowly.
Okay,
And, we have a very small area down there, it's probably about twice the size of this building, it's got some cattails in it. And we could delineate that, trade it off for some good soil if we wanted to, so that's a possibility too.
okay.
One of my questions I'm thinking of, there's gonna be a walking path there, you know what happens when you have a retention pond with water. You always have the geese and the ducks,
Yeah,
and they leave landmines everywhere they go.
yeah.
You can't walk on the path very good.
So my understanding, Bonnie, is it's just a retention and it'll drain.
It's slow.
Okay, Mark, help
It's
us.
slow draining, listen, we had them at the condos, I
Retention
know.
means it retains the water and stays.
Permanently, okay.
Detention means it detains the water over a period of time, but eventually drains out. The way this is designed right now, it will not hold water permanently. When you get a big gully washer storm, the water will go there and slowly filter out and you know, so it'll be wet, you know, but then it'll eventually dry out.
All right, that helps me.
Yeah.
Detention, because I'm just thinking Booker and Swartz being in detention at school.
Yeah.
They were there for a while,
Yeah,
and you
I
can see
heard.
they eventually got out, so.
And we, you know,
If he would
and
stop
that's an option.
putting
for
gum in
future.
my hair, I wouldn't have to fight him so much.
Stop going in the girls' bathrooms.
You know, we could in the future make that into a pond if we wanted to,
No,
but
I'm with
that's
Bonnie.
up, that's up to,
No.
yeah.
That's what I'm saying, no.
Yeah.
Fine, because that's what they do is,
Yes,
we have that problem at Discovery Park,
Yes.
and it's like, it becomes unusable, so.
Well, we have a management firm there now, and I think they've really done a lot with that pond to curtail some of the problems, but,
Yeah,
yeah, that's,
no, they automatically go, there's water, standing water.
yeah, you
They are
have to have
there.
a management plan in
They
place
are there.
before you build a pond, because you wanna deal with it ahead of the curve.
I'd like to say something to Dan, when you mentioned that you're not gonna have a lot of money left over for the road and what you wanna do. The numbers that we preliminary came up with, were about $400 per lineal foot of access road. So the main road coming in, if we went 400 feet, would be about $160,000. So, being there's $212,000 left, some of the money got used, 8 or 9,000, call it 200,000, would still leave about $40,000 to carve in maybe a limestone or chip and seal type walking trail around the park.
and I shared with them, and I think I'll share with the public, you know, you get this grant, and it's great, we're developing a park, and you need a road into it, you need a parking lot, you need restrooms, and all those things you can do, and along with your YMCA membership. I think my goal, and a lot of you probably share this, is we want something for people to do in the park that doesn't require a YMCA membership. So when you pull in on that street and park your car in the parking lot, you go to the restroom, and now you can do something in the park that
Well, yeah,
doesn't
park,
require,
right.
doesn't
It's supposed to be a
require,
park, right.
yeah, and I think about the connectivity to High Street, and the connectivity to, Brookview Estates, you know, which is, across from Bob Street.
Oh.
You know, so that part of the neighborhood can come across Locust Street and get back on the walking trail.
Are they gonna, you're gonna say it's come all the way to Locust Street, you think the path will, the walking path, that's the wetlands there?
To go around the wetlands be real
Well,
pretty.
I'm just wondering, I mean, like, can you walk back through there to get back to the walking path if you wanted to, or do you have to go all the way around to Canal Street?
Well, my
I'm
goal was,
speaking for myself from where I live,
your neighborhood,
yeah,
and that's what I would see, is some kind of connectivity.
I just wanna walk across the street.
Right,
Mhm.
and for the most part, you would probably, you have the parking lot to walk through, which would be a walkable surface. And then getting that walking trail up close enough to the parking lot that it would have access, so.
Now, one question I have, you said the walking path, I read it was gonna be limestone.
Well, it could be, I said it either could be limestone or possibly
chip and
and
Well, I like the chip
Okay.
and seal, yeah, that's what I would recommend, is we put this
Well,
stuff
limestone's
down
kind
and
of
chip.
a hard to walk on, I think, but, yeah, chip and
You
seal
know,
would probably be
and I
better.
keep meaning to stop at Lawrence Township, because their park, there's a great example of what they did over a period of time. The vision that the trustees had, especially Les Camp, to see that facility and to see how they grown
Little
it
by
over,
little, you're right.
little by little, and that's what we're taking that first step with this grant money, and,
You know, Mayor,
Yeah.
on a real positive note here, we've had a piece of land in a crown jewel center of town that hasn't been utilized, so the community has an investment of $1 million in this land. No one has enjoyed it, no one has used it, so with this anchor of the YMCA in there, getting this $750,000 state grant for park development, the Y is just simply the anchor in there, okay? So the fact that we've got a main road coming in, we've got a parking lot, and we get a track with that, all at no cost to the residents, I think is a great deal.
so we gotta crunch those numbers, and, and I shared with them, and I think Mr. Rouse will reemphasize that there's nothing left in the city coffers to be part of this other than that grant money that we're seeing and the $45,000 that we committed, so.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, and the ability to go for future grants, cause in the last 12 years, there hasn't been any grant money funneled into that park.
Yeah.
This will be just the start.
Yeah, and I'm gonna meet with, Kirk Schuring, here in the next couple of weeks, and, just understanding we're gonna be back at the door asking for more money, and we need it to keep developing it and, making it everything we want it to be. So. Alrighty, any questions? Open it up to the public. Cliff, or, we didn't invite any input there from, nothing there? Nothing, okay, all right. Anybody else wanna comment? Well, quiet, all right.
So Mayor, the next meeting will be,
We have a council meeting next,
November the 6th.
November 6th, okay.
What
I
time?
already got one scheduled.
Oh, we got one scheduled, it's 6 o'clock?
Scheduled it, yeah.
All right, thanks for reminding me there, Ms. Teresa.
Yeah, they scheduled that one before they scheduled this one, and then decided to keep that one. They had any more discussion about this one.
It'll be nice, hopefully, we'll have the rest of council and Mr. Felmuth here for that one and get another perspective on this.
Yeah, and we'll get this stuff to Mr. Felmuth so he can, be prepared, and,
sorry, Mayor, there's another work session on November sixth?
November 6th at 6 o'clock?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. All right, that being said, if anybody has no objection, I'm gonna adjourn the meeting. Thanks, everybody. My YMCA folder just keeps getting thicker and thicker.
He was very happy with
I'll shoot
the,
you some.
you know.
My response?
Yeah. He was very grateful for it. I'm in favor of it, he just was confused. I wasn't sure how to answer him, because, I've written down some comments, but,
Where's my honey, brother?
that's good. I mean, that's what you want, Sometimes people bring things up that you just, makes you see something different,
Well, how about you?
I could tell he was like, you know.
You so need to